Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're immersing ourselves in one of those provocative texts we've encountered in a long time.
It's definitely provocative.
Like a philosophical manual, and it promises nothing less than an eye-opening transformation. It's all about understanding yourself and, achieving what the author calls great work.
Hmm.
We are diving into chapter 1 of SKR's foundational text, The Legend Mind, Zero to Infinity.
And this is, I think, a pretty unique deep dive for us. We're treating this single chapter, Mind, Origin, or Evolution, as a complete blueprint.
Right.
The author, Sonu Kumar, isn't just giving you, self-help platitudes. They're creating this highly structured, almost interdisciplinary framework.
Feels that way. It blends so many things.
Exactly. This first chapter pulls together concepts we usually see kept separate.
Yeah.
You've got ancient spiritual wisdom, modern science, cosmology, even number lysology, and physics. And it's all aimed at answering what the author calls these striking questions.
And the mission here, the whole engine for the book, seems to be this pursuit of wisdom and enlightenment.
Absolutely.
So our goal for you, the listener, is kind of twofold. First, we want you to really grasp the author's, radical definition of the mind.
It is very precise.
And second, to fully internalize this idea of the absolute, almost terrifying control that diet has over that definition. This book does not mince words at all. Your food choices are the foundation of everything.
They really are. And to get the stakes here, we have to anchor ourselves in the author's philosophy right from the start. The text opens with an invocation, J-I-I-G-U-R-U-D-E-V.
Which is a traditional salute, right, to the divine teacher.
Yes. And then, even more critically, SKR defines the very word legend with this deep, almost, I'd say, militaristic acronym.
Yeah, I was struck by that. It's L, legacy, E,
Right.
even, G, IORD, end, N, not D, demons.
Right, so think about what that means.
That's a lot of weight packed into 6 letters. It's not about fame or anything fleeting. It's about building an immortal moral legacy that actively fights off, demons, negative forces.
It frames the whole thing as a spiritual conflict, doesn't it? The soul has to win.
It really does.
And that idea is just immediately reinforced by the author's own inspiration. The Lord Shiva. SKR dedicates the work to their immortal guru and says they were inspired by Shiva's primordial time lifestyle.
So this isn't inspiration from, like, a modern motivational speaker. This is an ascetic ideal.
Exactly. It led SKR to seek a life of zero attraction of the world. Solitude.
So the goal isn't really conventional success, is it? It's not about climbing a corporate ladder. It's about getting internal clarity and power through, purity and detachment.
Modeled after a divine solitary figure.
Okay, so if that's the grand vision, the author needs a very, very strong structure to guide the reader there.
Absolutely. Think of the book like a temple being built for the mind. The author splits the path into 4 major steps, or units. And the first one, the one we're focusing on, is the absolute foundation. SKR calls it legend self-improvements.
The blueprint for the self, we could call it. The whole point of this first unit is about refining your internal energy, which SKR calls the soul,
An incredibly ambitious goal.
to make the soul enlightened by wisdom process. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. And it needs a daily, practical strategy built on these 4 core pillars.
And chapter 1, our chapter, is the absolute starting point. It's like the concrete mix for the whole foundation. It's titled Mind, Origin, or Evolution.
And it focuses entirely on the input, right? How the food we eat influences our mind's ability to concentrate.
Yes, because if that foundation is solid, then the next step is possible, the ladder toward wisdom. That chapter is all about the specific steps you need to build powerful concentration.
But you can't start climbing that ladder if the base is cracked.
You can't. And after you start climbing, you have to manage your psychological defenses. So the third pillar is attitude. It explores how to maintain a zero attitude or balance attitudes.
What does that mean, a zero attitude?
The author argues that only true neutrality, a 0 point, lets you tackle any problem effectively without your emotions getting in the way.
Okay, I see. And the final pillar of this whole unit.
The final pillar is information vs. knowledge. SKR presents this distinction as the absolute key to understanding the ultimate universe maker mind.
So the difference between just collecting data from the outside world versus achieving a real internal wisdom-based understanding.
Precisely. So if you look at that hierarchy, if your concentration is shot, which is chapter 1, if that base is cracked, the whole structure just falls apart.
You can't climb the ladder, your attitude is unbalanced.
And you'll spend your life confusing information for real knowledge. So this all brings us right back to the most immediate, the most fundamental problem that the author sees facing us.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the author starts chapter 1 not with some grand metaphysical theory, but with something very immediate, very visceral. The problem of unlimited desire.
Yes, SKR anchors the whole discussion right in our daily experience. What does the mind constantly demand? The examples are intentionally mundane, but they're so relatable.
Food items, new cloths, money or assets, traveling, trying new things.
And then, of course, the catch-all. Many more.
It really highlights the relentless pull of the world, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the dilemma the author points to. These desires are not limited, but unlimited.
They're infinite, always competing, always refreshing.
Which, if you think about it, makes the mind a source of paralysis. It makes it difficult to choose the best desire for our life. You're just being pulled in a million directions at once.
And this leads the author straight into the paradox of the mind itself. We know it directs us. It makes us want the new clothes or book the trip. But SKR points out that the mind is not physically present.
Right.
Yet it acts as the supreme head of our brain or body. It's like an invisible general commanding a physical army.
Wait, okay, if it isn't physical, how does it direct the brain? Is the author speaking purely metaphorically here, or are they talking about some kind of literal energy transfer?
The author suggests it's the latter. They connect the mind directly to the non-physical soul or energy.
Okay.
And to help us get our heads around this non-physical but directive force, SKR uses a really potent cultural shortcut. They tell us to think about seeing soul paranormal activity in horror movies.
That's actually brilliant, because we all instantly get that. The idea of an unseen entity, a ghost or a spirit, that can move objects or influence people.
Exactly. It reframes the mind not as a physical organ, but as an energetic presence that you can only observe through its effects on the body.
So by linking it to the soul, the concept gets a real structure.
And that leads to the core definition, the kind of algebraic formula presented right at the start of the text. Mind, desire of soul.
Wow. Okay, so that synthesizes everything. The mind isn't the soul itself. The mind is the collective output of what the soul wants. The text even has a diagram showing the human mind being composed of multiple soul desires. Soul desire 1, soul desire 2, and so on.
The soul is the energy source. The mind is just the measurable evidence of that energy trying to engage with the world.
So the mind's function is desire, but its origin is the non-physical soul.
Right, but that just begs the next question, doesn't it? If the quality of our mind, our focus, our concentration, how intense our desires are, if that determines our entire life, what influences the soul's energy in the first place?
And the author's answer is stunningly simple. They turn to tradition.
Here's where it gets really, really interesting. SKR just skips over all the complex metaphysics and gives us the answer in a foundational ancestral teaching, an axiom in Hindi.
TSLK VUUK OSLKU.
And the translation is the linchpin of the entire book. It's delivered like a hammer blow. Our mind depends upon our food that we take as vegetarian or non-vegetarian.
Wow. I mean, that's it. It's an assertion that just boils down the entire complexity of psychology, spirituality, behavior. It boils it all down to what's on your plate.
Your mental clarity, your temper, your ability to reach enlightenment, all of it is determined by whether you eat plants or you eat meat.
That's an incredibly bold claim.
It is. But before diving into what that means, the author has to address a question from the last section. If the mind is made of multiple desires, is the mind itself one thing or many?
Right.
And to explain this, the author uses a really simple but compelling model. The tree analogy.
This analogy, which is figure 1.2 in the book, it's used to show how one single system, the human mind and body, can take in a common input, but still produce these incredibly varied and distinct outputs, or conflicting desires.
Let's just visualize the components here for a second. The tree itself is the human mind and body, the unified physical structure.
Okay, the trunk and branches.
Exactly. And the common inputs needed for life, oxygen, sunlight, water, fertilizer, those are analogous to the food we eat, vegetarian or non-vegetarian. That's what provides the energy for growth.
But it's the output where all the variety happens. The tree produces fruits and leaves and flowers.
And SKR connects these directly to our common desires. Fruits might represent new cloths, leaves could be a new mobile phone, and flowers might be traveling to new places.
The simplicity of that is so powerful.
It is. A sweet fruit, a bitter leaf, a fragrant flower, they all need the same sunlight and water, the same common inputs. They're all part of the same tree, the same body.
But their outputs, their desires, if you will, are totally different. The fruit wants to be sweet. The flower wants to be fragrant. The leaf has its own texture.
So the body is the common vessel, and eating is the necessary input. But what this analogy really does is prime us for the big conclusion. If the tree is the same, then changing the quality of the fertilizer.
Switching from vegetarian to non-vegetarian.
It must completely change the nature of all the outputs. The sweet, the bitter, all of it. The quality of the mind, the quality of every single desire, has to change based on this great divide.
Which brings us to the next section.
SKR presents this not as some philosophical idea to ponder, but as an empirical mandate. The author literally tells the reader to spend at least 3 days or 1 week just observing these two groups of people.
To witness the differences in their behavior, how they react, the text claims these differences aren't subtle at all, they're absolute.
And the comparison table that's provided, it leaves zero gray area. It's a stark moral and intellectual judgment. One path leads to enlightenment and the other doesn't.
We should probably go through these by theme because just reading them line by line doesn't really capture the weight of what the author is claiming.
Good idea. Let's start with temperament and emotional control. The author claims vegetarians are inherently calm and composed.
And the opposite trait for non-vegetarians is aggressive in anger. So that's the most immediate behavioral split. One path is tranquility, the other is volatility.
Which links directly back to that first problem we talked about. Desire. Vegetarians are characterized by having limited or negligible desire,
They've mastered the mind, which is the collective desire of the soul.
whereas non-vegetarians are afflicted by unlimited desires. Their soul's wants are just endless and inflamed. So if you want self-control, SKR is saying the very first step is to quiet the soul's demands through what you eat.
Okay, what about ambition? The source of power.
This is a big one. The author asserts that vegetarians work for natural power. Their strength comes from being aligned with nature, with the cosmos.
And non-vegetarians.
They work for man-made power. They rely on systems of authority, wealth, societal structures, technology.
And this leads right into the big difference in intelligence. Vegetarians are called wisdom peoples.
While non-vegetarians are called clever peoples.
That's a fascinating distinction.
It is. Cleverness implies this sharp, tactical resourcefulness. It's perfect for manipulating those man-made power systems. But wisdom is deep, it's intuitive, it's connected to fundamental truth, and that's what you need for natural power.
And the author gives some pretty stark examples to illustrate this.
They do. The wisdom peoples include figures like Buddha, the monk, the priest, the guru, people defined by detachment, the search for internal, universal truths.
And the clever peoples are represented by the rich, the king, and the leader. Those who achieve dominance within the world's social and financial systems.
The implication there is just profound. SKR is claiming that the pursuit of earthly wealth and power is inherently a less enlightened path than the pursuit of internal wisdom.
It's the difference between managing the physical world and mastering the energetic one.
Okay, let's look at lifestyle and alignment. The wisdom peoples prefer simple and alone life. Solitude is key.
And the clever peoples prefer luxury and social life, which obviously requires constant acquisition and maintenance, all driven by those unlimited desires.
And spiritually, this is crucial. Vegetarians are described as nature lover and have a belief in faith.
While non-vegetarians are less nature lover and are defined by not belief in faith, this suggests your diet is the absolute gatekeeper to having a spiritual worldview at all.
Finally, let's touch on moral character and mental posture. This is where the claims get, well, pretty extreme.
Yeah, they do. Vegetarians are said to have neutral mindsets, that ideal 0 point that can assess anything without bias. And they're described as kind, honest, careful persons.
Non-vegetarians, on the other hand, are locked into an either positive or negative mindset. They're always reacting. And they're defined as cruel, ego, jealousy persons.
That is a staggering assertion.
It really is.
Yeah.
The author is essentially saying your food choice determines your morality. It implies that a kind, rich leader is, by definition, operating under a flawed, fragmented internal system.
That their goodness is compromised by the ego and unlimited desires that come with a non-vegetarian diet.
It's an absolute judgment.
So it demands we ask the question,
Yeah.
why? Why is this distinction so absolute? Why must one be cruel and jealous just because of what they eat?
And the answer to that lies in this dramatic metaphysical mechanism that SKR proposes next. It's the terrifying evolution of the mind into a multi-user, multi-soul operating system.
Okay, this is the critical part of the whole argument, and I think we need to approach it with that kind of...
Yeah.
You mentioned a movie style. It feels very dramatic.
It's meant to be. The author isn't using a metaphor here. They are describing what they see as a literal spiritual energy transaction that fundamentally changes human consciousness.
This is the moment the single mind fractures.
Yes. The author sets the stage with a hypothetical person, Person X. This person eats dead creatures, fish, chicken, beef, pork, and so on, 4 days a week.
And the key point is that Person X is the reason these creatures died.
Yeah.
It's driven by their own desire, foods, or meals. The desire for the meat dictates the death.
And here's the core mechanism. We could call it the soul absorption theory. These creatures, the fish, the hen, the cow, they had a soul. They wanted to live.
Right.
SKR claims that when they're killed for the sake of your desire, their souls do not just dissipate, they continue to exist.
And what happens to that existing soul energy?
It becomes a part of this person as a mind to their own mind. Essentially, the act of eating forces the soul of the creature you ate to integrate into your own consciousness. It adds another voice to your mental operating system.
Let's visualize what the author calls the block diagram reality. Before the meal, Person X has their own single mind.
One mind.
But after 4 meals with 4 different creatures, that single mind is now joined by the fish's soul, the hen's soul, the cow's soul, the sea fish's soul.
You now have 4 competing minds operating inside you alongside your original self. And what's truly terrifying is the consequence of this. When a desire pops up, I want that new car or I want that promotion, the author states very clearly, this is not true.
Meaning it's not your desire.
Exactly. The desires you feel now belong to these newly absorbed minds.
Yeah.
You are feeling the urges of a deceased fish or a cow, and the cycle just repeats. The next week, you eat different creatures, and it just multiplies your minds in your own mind.
And this choir of deceased souls starts to drown out the original director.
Your single mind, the one that represents your unique intelligence, your original purpose. It slowly gets lost in your own brain. It loses its voice, its authority.
And this leads to SKR's really dark, dramatic metaphor, the one that captures the visual horror of this whole situation.
Yes, the body becomes like a clown, where your operator is all these multiple soul which you killed for own desire.
Just picture that image. A clown is a puppet, a figure doing these manic mechanical actions for someone else's amusement.
You're moving, laughing, making decisions, but the original driver is gone, replaced by the chaotic collective will of every creature you've ever eaten. You're just performing the desires of dead fish and chickens.
A complete loss of control. And the practical negative consequences of this internal chaos are immediate, especially for someone trying to do great work.
SKR says you lose control over your own body. You get angry over small things, a direct symptom of all these minds fighting for the controls.
And most critically, your own decisions stop working for you because they're diluted and compromised by the conflicting desires of all these absorbed souls.
So the non-vegetarian path, according to this text, it's not just a bad choice. It's a mechanism for spiritual fragmentation. It leads straight to internal chaos, volatility, and the total loss of your own autonomy.
It makes the pursuit of wisdom impossible. The operator of the body isn't singular and focused anymore. It's multiple and confused.
So if that's the path to fragmentation, the vegetarian path promises the opposite. The single, unified, highly concentrated mind that you need for wisdom.
This group eats vegetables, fruits, and leaves.
But SKR isn't satisfied with just being a vegetarian. The author introduces this incredibly high standard of purity that's based on the method of acquisition.
It's not enough just to avoid eating creatures with souls. You also have to avoid any action that's driven by desire when you get your food.
This is where SKR ties it all back to that ideal of zero attraction of the world. Even the smallest human intervention can compromise your mind's concentration.
The text defines 2 different situations for getting your meals. And the difference between them is tiny but vital.
The first one, the ideal, is getting food without external force. This means vegetables, fruits, and leaves that have to fall on the ground naturally, without being plumped by humans.
So it's a passive collection of food that nature has just given up willingly.
Yes. The second situation is getting the same things, but with external force. These items fall on the ground with external force, meaning a human plucked them.
And the result on the mind is dramatic.
The author claims that people who get their meals in that first way, the naturally fallen food, have a more or highly concentrated mind than the second group.
Let's just analyze the implication there because it's pretty extreme. Why does the simple act of picking a piece of fruit diminish your concentration?
Because plucking is an act of desire. It requires you to assert your human will, your external force, over nature.
I see. So if the goal is to have a mind that's completely untethered from worldly desire, that zero attraction, then even the desire to get a perfect unfallen piece of fruit is a spiritual compromise.
Exactly. The ideal mind is only fed by what the cosmos gives freely, without the person exerting any force or any desire-driven action on their environment.
So SKR is saying that even inside the pure vegetarian group, true wisdom is only for those whose entire process of eating is utterly passive. It has to reflect a total non-attachment to the outcome.
The second you exert desire, even to choose and pluck a healthy vegetable, you've introduced an external interference. And that compromises the mind's maximum possible concentration. It sets an almost impossibly high bar.
It really does.
So what does this all mean when we put it all together, when we synthesize the dense philosophy of this first chapter?
SKR's thesis is clear and it's absolute. The key to internal control is hyper-awareness of what you eat, because your diet dictates whether your body is operated by a single, powerful intelligence or a chaotic committee of deceased souls.
If you're on the non-vegetarian path, the author says you are sacrificing your personal autonomy. You're choosing spiritual fragmentation, which leads to unlimited desires, debilitating anger, and decisions that don't serve your original purpose.
You're a puppet dancing to the will of consumed creatures.
But if you go the vegetarian route, you have the potential for a powerful, singular, highly concentrated mind.
But to unlock that potential, you have to push non-attachment to its absolute limit. You have to avoid even the desire-driven act of plucking food from nature itself.
And this radical unity of mind, it's the prerequisite for everything else. It affects every part of your life, from the kind of power you seek natural versus man-made, to your ability to make decisions best versus just better.
SKR's final conclusion in the chapter really serves as both a philosophical statement and a call to action. Your own soul or single mind is your own intelligence's.
And the command that follows is simple. To control your mind, you must learn to treat with your intelligence. You have to become rigorously conscious of the inputs of the metaphysical mechanics. You have to recognize that the battle against confusion and desire is settled long before you ever try to meditate or study.
We know that the next chapter in the book is dedicated to the ladder toward wisdom. And the source material makes this huge distinction, claiming that people who seek natural power are after knowledge, while those who seek man-made power are only after information.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. If the single mind is required to get true wisdom and knowledge, and the multi-mind is doomed to endless information and confusion, how fundamentally does the composition of your mind affect your ability to even begin climbing that ladder?
What's the baseline level of internal order you have to achieve before real learning can even start? And what's the first smallest external action you would need to surrender to nature to treat your mind with the intelligence the author demands?
That's what we'll leave you to mull over until our next deep dive.